If you haven't heard, we are blockchain space. So we are the first dedicated blockchain location in the Philippines. We started off this year around May 2018. We have two partners, Accelerate by Union Space, which is the co-working space you see out there, and also SEI, which is a fintech company. And basically what SEI does is use blockchain technology to streamline financial services. And blockchain space is actually part of a whole coalition of different blockchain spaces all around Southeast Asia. So we have a location in Malaysia, Indonesia, and Bangkok. Yeah. So we're all over Southeast Asia. Basically what we do here is we host pretty much weekly events just to drive understanding and adoption of blockchain technology. And we have three different types of events right now. We have the Starter Series, which is basically a series of events where we assume you have little to no knowledge of blockchain. Next is our Level Up series of events, which is if you understand what blockchain is but want to delve more into the details of what this technology can provide. So this is a Level Up series event, for example. And then last, we have the Pro Series line of events, which is if you really want to get into the technical nitty-gritty of what blockchain is. So that's usually developer meetups. Our last Pro Series event we had was actually coding your own blockchain-based token. I encourage all of you, if you want to know more about us, follow our Facebook group, Blockchain Space PH, and also our Telegram. And I'll just play a short little video just to give you more information about what we're about.
If you were to ask anyone today what is blockchain about, most people would probably still say Bitcoin. And Bitcoin is actually only one usage case of the actual blockchain technology. Today we want to be able to educate people from ABC all the way through to XYZ.
There are other industries that can take advantage of the technology, and the fact that the integrity is well kept and that is very secure. A lot of the industries it's already powering our society right now, but in a much better way. Blockchain will help improve that.
Blockchain Space started in Jakarta, and today is actually our launch in Manila, which is our second space.
One of the reasons for opening dedicated spaces, specifically in this case for blockchain, is to basically grow the community and grow the ecosystem. Largely in two parts. One is obviously for local startups in the local ecosystem in Jakarta, in Manila, and in Bangkok and other cities across Southeast Asia later on, to really offer that support and acceleration and a launch pad for them to attack not only the country that they're in, but also regionally. So actually by sort of helping these local startups, we hope that some of the globally leading blockchain companies can come out of blockchain space. The second part of that is also aiding a lot of blockchain companies coming from either Europe, China, US and other parts of the world who have targets basically in Southeast Asia or want to grow in Southeast Asia. We want to help facilitate their growth and act sort of like as a landing pad for them.
If you want to learn more about blockchain, we'd like to invite you to our blockchain center here in Accelerate, one-on-one paseo. You meet a lot of companies that are in the fintech industry that are practicing blockchain, or those that are just curious to know more about it. We hope that you can visit our space here in Makati.
Okay, that pretty much sums it up. Thank you all for coming once more, and I'll just pass it off to our moderator, Mensch. Please give her a round of applause.
Hi, good evening everyone. I'm Mensch Dizon. My day job is I'm a CEO and founder of a startup called Trip Club. We're a travel technology provider providing travel concierge for the hyper traveler. It's interesting that a lot of hyper travelers are in the blockchain space. So I find that intersection quite interesting, allowing me to do the different things that I do and aligning them into just one singular effort. So anyway, part of my advocacy is building Women in Blockchain Manila. So we haven't formally launched, but the thrust of the group is really to highlight social impact projects using the blockchain. And so the reason I said yes to moderate this panel this evening is because of the topic. It's humanitarian initiatives on the blockchain. And we're so privileged to host this evening, to have with us this evening the Lifemesh group. And they're just really here in transit, so we took advantage of their short stint here in Manila en route to Bangladesh. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce John Leotier of Lifemesh. John is one of the co-founders of Left and the CEO of Lifemesh HG. Lifemesh is a mobile mesh networking platform and protocol focused on bringing connectivity and financial inclusion to the next billion users. While John has a 20-year career in enterprise software, marketing, and technology startups, his proudest achievements include building a team and culture that consistently recognized for their service and community engagement, and as a best workplace for balancing work, life, and play. Left is a certified B Corporation and is proof that a business can be used as a force for good in the world. And isn't that such a great thing, having that intersection of providing so much meaning and good in the world and also business. So, John, talk to us about Lifemesh.
Hi, everybody. Works. There you go. When you travel a lot, you don't see a lot. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having us here. It's myself and several of my colleagues in town. And as I said, we are just passing through. Last 2 weeks, we were in Bangladesh. We actually have a team in Bangladesh of about 100 engineers and application specialists. We went there 8 years ago. We started a parent company, and we fell in love with the country and the people and the food. The food's incredible. But the last few weeks, we did actually something a little bit different on that trip. We actually went out to the Rohingya refugee camp on the edge of the Myanmar border. And for those who've been paying attention to the news, there is a genocide going on in Myanmar. There's hundreds of thousands and millions of people fleeing Myanmar into the most southern part of Bangladesh. We toured the camp. We looked at what blockchain can do in there. The answer, unfortunately, is not much. But we went there to see what we could do. And that really sort of, in the end, we'll talk, but what I would sort of ask of you today is always think what technology could do for the people that you're trying to talk. Go over and talk to the customer, go over and figure what it can do, and go from there. So this is a variation of the talk I've been giving over a journey. We're talking about that the traveler. Over the last year and a half, I have killed many planets through my travels. From, I think it was in Switzerland 6 times, Singapore 5 times, Bangladesh twice, California, I don't know how many different times. So when you start going through the ICO process or get involved in the decentralized space, it is the global community. So I often talk about connecting the next billion users in the decentralized mesh network and peer-to-peer and blah, 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 blah. But frankly, that's not fun for me or for you. So I'm going to actually do a different one. This is a tribute to our robot overlords. So bear with me here for a little bit. We'll see how this goes. So first and foremost, who are we? Well, we're Lifemesh. We are a peer-to-peer mesh networking platform and protocol. And what we mean by that is we allow phones to talk to other phones, then talk to other phones and other phones with no infrastructure at all. So the people and the device forms the infrastructure. It is a software protocol, which means that any existing application can use our protocol and become a mesh-enabled application. So my phone and my app can talk to your phone, and you can go on that person and that person. Really what ends up happening is that you create this connectivity group of users, and they can share data and incentivize the users for that right behavior. So I'll look a bit about mesh networking itself, and more importantly, what is ad hoc mobile mesh networking, which is what we're looking at. In brief, if you think about how connectivity is done today, connectivity goes from your phone to, if you and I are going to engage and share messages back and forth, if you use WeChat as an example, even in the same room, you send a message from me to the Wi-Fi router, to the cell tower, to the centralized infrastructure, to the Chinese government who's listening in on all WeChat conversations, all the way back down to me. And that just doesn't make sense. What should happen is me to you, or me through somebody else to me. And really what a mesh network does is allows those devices just to connect. By ad hoc mobile, we actually are working on smartphones or Java-enabled devices. But more importantly, I want to look at the conversation of what is money. And that's kind of more about what we're here for, not money in the sense of, hey, look how much we have. But actually, let's do an exercise. What I want you guys to do is put your hands up in front of you and close your eyes. So trust me on this, I won't so close your eyes. Okay, now imagine that you're holding money in your hands. Visualize it, feel the texture, feel the weight. You don't have your eyes closed back there. So if you feel that, so what does that money look like? Is it okay, open your eyes again if you had the thing. Is it a peso? Is it a Bangladeshi taka? Is it an Indian rupee? Is it a US dollar, Canadian dollar? Is it a coin? Is it a bill? What is money? Is it a live chicken? Is it a shell? All those things could be money. Is it an hour of time? Is it a original thought or an idea? So the more question is, what is money, but what is value, and is value money? So hold that thought in your mind for a bit, and let's look at the next question. What is a robot? You sort of have a visualization of what a robot is, but more importantly, what does a mesh network and a robot do with blockchain? So when you think about robots, you think about this. This is sort of the classic robot competition where they, oh, it's so close, not quite working. Or you think about the great beer robot of 2016 where it pours you into the amazing cups and this does things. Robot actually is a term from an old Czech play that really is all about robots that are doing work on behalf of humans. So a machine that resembles a human does mechanical routine tasks on command, any machine or mechanical device that operates automatically with human-like skills. The initial play, Robota, was a Czech play, 1920, and it was all about the servitude of forced labor. And it was a commentary of the working class at the time, and it was kind of a pick-me-up play, because really what happened in there is that the robots started to produce and mass produce. Eventually, they overthrew humanity and killed everybody but 2 people on the planet, realized it's bad, and then they fell in love, and then they didn't kill the last 2 people, but those people saw the wisdom of their ways. So when you start thinking about what is the future of robots, and you start seeing videos of this from Boston Dynamics with the abuse that we are showing our robots in the future, this isn't good. So notice that the guy here has a hockey stick. The fact that he's holding a hockey stick does not mean he's from Canada, and does not mean that Canada is bad. So it's an important distinction to have. So this is more of a message for the future robots that may be watching. This is not me. I have nothing to do with this. I'm actually here to say this is not good. We actually got a robot in our office the other day. This is sort of a telepresence robot that we're sort of experimenting with. But the first robot really sort of came about with this guy. This guy created this thing called a printing press. So back in the Gutenberg era of the printing press, he said, okay, I want to automate some behavior. What he wanted to automate was actually the writing of the Bible. And what he did is that he put a whole bunch of monks out of work. Is it good? Is it bad? Well, he started spreading knowledge, but he actually put a whole bunch of people out of work. Then came along this guy, that has been invented a long time. This is Henry Ford, and he started building the assembly line. And okay, now we can actually combine the robots or the machines and the people and do things with much greater efficiency. Then came this guy, the ex-chairman of Tesla, who said, hey, I can now start doing all these really cool robots that are self-driving robots. And building things like the self-driving trucks. They're able to go from one side of a country to the other side of the country, refueling, recharging, and doing those things. There's a huge panic right now about what's going to happen when all these robots start acting on their own and basically generating value on behalf of their owners. There's tons of people out of work because of this. And the reality is, we want robots to work for us. That's the number one thing that we as humans and as species, we want. We want the robots to work for us. But more importantly, we want them to create value for us. So if work produces value, work produces money, money is value. We want those robots to produce value. So what we're really wanting is this type of robot. Cleans your house, does the dishes, makes your life better. That's kind of what we wanted. Unfortunately, what we get is this, a cat sitting on a Roomba. It's not quite what you expect. But really what is actually happening right now in the world is that you're having this. This is the Tesla factory. This is the Tesla factory making cars. You don't see any people in this factory. So the factory of the future is not going to have any people. The factories in places like Bangladesh have a whole lot of people currently using machines. They're doing work on behalf of you, producing value, getting your clothing, getting your textiles. But that's a rare sight in the future. It's been said that the factory of the future will have only 2 employees, a man and a dog. The man will be there to feed the dog, and the dog will be there to keep the man from touching the equipment. So if you think about that, what are we worried about? What's the craze? Well, I maintain that robots are here today, and they are creating value. Unfortunately, they arrived in a way that we did not expect. What we expected was Rosie from the Jetsons, but what we got was cube-shaped miners doing work on our behalf. Think about that. These miners are robots. They're doing calculations, they're performing transactions, they're validating things in the blockchain, the thing that we're creating. And that value is all digital. The world today, in the information age, it is all digital. So if they're creating value, and value is digital, what does that mean? Well, I think it's kind of cool because a coin mined in China, or the Philippines, or Bangladesh, or anywhere in the world, is the same value as a coin on the other side of the world. It doesn't matter where it's being mined, it has the same intrinsic value, because value is now digital. Which brings us back to mesh networks, and more importantly, into phone-shaped robots. Your phone is a robot. Your phone is capable of producing value, your phone is capable of digitizing the world around you. So if you want your phone to do work for you, or your phone is capable of doing work for you, what does that mean for the future? Well, imagine your phone earning 50 cents a day for sharing climate data it's able to gather. Your phone has amazing sensors, there's tons of different information that's capable of doing it. If your phone's capable of collecting all that sensory information and sharing it, could you earn value on behalf of your phone just being there? Or imagine earning 20 cents for sharing an app update. Only one in five WhatsApp apps are the current version. 4 to 5 are out of date. Would a company be willing to pay you as a carrier of your phone to update somebody else? 20 cents, 10 cents, 50 cents? Somewhere there is a price that they'd be willing to pay. Or imagine sharing your Wi-Fi with a tourist and earning 50 cents for doing so. But if you're a tourist and you're stuck in a city, you are definitely willing to pay something. So what is the value that you're willing to give, or your phone is willing to give, either autonomously without your involvement, or even with your involvement? Or imagine every time you walk into a store, you decide that my sovereign identity, I'm willing to share my buyer persona, my buyer profile with a shopkeeper. Would that shopkeeper say, hey, I want to give you 10 cents for sharing your buyer persona? Your phone may decide, well, I'm working for my owner, and my owner wants 15 cents. And you can't negotiate back and forth on your phone's behalf, or on the owner's behalf with the shopkeeper. All autonomously, of course. All that's not possible with this new phone-shaped robot that we're walking around with. Or imagine earning 74 cents for every time you distribute a free app to another user. This actually, user here, it's a little bit hard to see in the light. This is actually an internet seller in Bangladesh. So what was actually happening is that, much like the Sari shops here in the Philippines, there are internet sellers in Bangladesh. We actually would walk up, you hand over your phone, they pop out the SD card, and they transfer apps and games and news and cricket highlights to your phone. You give them 25 TAC, about 18 US cents, you get your week's worth of internet. Reason being is the internet's so slow, the networks are so overloaded that they can't afford to access this free content on the web. So now imagine your phone earning $1 a day. If all those other things are possible, can you actually start earning value for your robot, your phone-shaped robot, and that $1 a day? We believe if you do, you start creating a universal basic income. So if you actually give $1 a day to a truly poor individual or somebody in an emerging market, that's the equivalent value of 66 American. $1 in Bangladesh is 33 American. That's the equivalent of a universal basic income. We believe that through the power of technology and the power of these smartphones that we're all walking around with today, we're about to transform some things. We're about to transform how value is being created. It's not about value being spent or wealth being redistributed from those who have to those who have not. It's about those who have already invested their physical infrastructure or their mobility and now saying, okay, I want to take this device and have it work for me. And as soon as you do that, you start transforming all society. And that's kind of what we're about with Lifemesh. Is we now know that the world has 4 billion smartphones, soon we'll have 6 billion smartphones, and soon everybody on the planet will have a smartphone. However, there's still 4 billion people who do not have connectivity. 2 billion people do not have banking. As soon as you start giving that person connectivity, as soon as you give them the ability for their phone to work for them, you start changing society. And that's kind of what we're all about. So with that, thanks, robots.
Thanks, John, for sharing with us your robot story. But you know what? One of the reasons why I also got fascinated with the blockchain space is really how it enables the exchange of value and the creation of value, and really redefining what value means. And I think it continues to evolve as new business models, as new business practices are emerging from this new technology. So we'll come back later for a panel. I'd like to also call in our other panelists from Lifemesh. So Lifemesh is a disaster management platform that facilitates transparency between non-government organizations and government institutions. It does this by connecting, verifying, and tracking resources needed for effective disaster management. Their platforms support key representatives from the government and non-government institutions in getting and verifying the resources they need to stabilize the situation further. Additionally, they help NGOs, non-government organizations, coordinate efforts as supply and demand can be globally published. So, is it Carlo or Christopher is gonna? So Christopher Vercelis will speak more about Lifemesh.
Okay guys, so this won't be as detailed as John's presentation. It's just a quick intro so that you know what we're talking about when Carlo is on the panel. Okay, so we are Lifemesh. So my name is Chris. I'm the CTO of Lifemesh, and we're essentially connecting NGOs that provide help to LGUs that need that help before, during, and after disaster situations. So why are we doing that? So we noticed that disasters around the world are happening more and more often, and basically the NGOs, the foundations, the humanitarian sphere that are supposed to help alleviate the situations aren't really keeping up with, let's say, the increase in disaster rates. So we wanted to solve the problem, but we identified some things. So NGOs and LGUs aren't keeping up, and we identified 3 main problems where we can help that out. So the first is a lack of traceability. So has anyone here tried donating to an NGO or humanitarian effort? So what was the first thing that happened? Usually, whether it's money or food, you donate it and then thank you. Maybe you get a Facebook tag or a photo, and then that's it. So we call that the blind trust problem. So we're trying to solve that by making sure that you can track goods or services or monetary or money that you donated. You can track it every step of the way, wherever it went, even if it changes hands multiple times, it goes to another country. We want to make sure that you can pinpoint where something goes wrong or where it goes right. So you'll be able to see it at every step of the way. Forgotten communities. So we all know about Tacloban. Have you heard about Panagatan? So Panagatan is a small island off the coast of Tacloban that was hit by the same disaster, but only received 1 bag of food, for example. So there are small forgotten communities that are not addressed in disaster situations. They need the same help, but they don't get it because they're not newsworthy, for example. So that's another problem we want to address by making sure that every community gets what it needs, when and where it needs it. And another one is irrelevant donations. So there are like situations, I'll give one example, where someone donates something from, let's say, North America to another, let's say, winter area or cold country, but instead it ends up in a tropical country like the Philippines. And that's completely unneeded, and it doesn't make sense, but it happens because of logistics problems. So those are the 3 problems we want to solve, and we realized that, no surprise, we can use a blockchain to do it. So basically, we're building a supply tracking backend for all logistics scenarios. So we're providing a automated community-owned record of all stages in a charitable supply chain. What does that mean? The community owns basically every record of every charitable transaction in the world, and you can see where it goes, when it goes, what happened, who took it, and if something happens, you can say, oh, that person dropped the ball. So we're matching the movement of physical objects from the provider to the recipient, and it's transparent at every step of the way. And here's a bit about our team. Won't dwell so much on that for the moment, but here's what we've done so far. So in about, let's say, January to June earlier this year, we helped about 16,700 people through our partner organizations like Wait for Water. We were in about 4 sites, including Marawi. So they used the Lifemesh app to coordinate the response of goods sent from the NGOs to the LGUs that needed that help. So yeah. And yeah, so basically that's what we do. We list needs, we send the help, and then we verify the sending of those goods and services. So yeah, we were in Marawi, where we helped about 6,000 people. Pulag, somewhere up north, I think, right, Carlo? That was like 700 people. Then Subic, 5,000. Palawan, 5,000 as well. So Waste for Water has been using our app to really improve their services. So that's a quick intro on Lifemesh, and that's it for us.
Thanks, Chris. There's a real use case for a product like this for a disaster-prone country like the Philippines. So I'm sure you've noticed for the Lifemesh guys, our country has a lot of wicked problems. And this product is just really something that we're excited because there's always a typhoon here in the country. So we're excited for that. And the last speaker is Aya Garcia from ConsenSys to talk to us, to talk a bit about some of their projects. And ConsenSys is really a global formation of technologists and entrepreneurs building the infrastructure, applications, and practices that enable a decentralized world. Right?
Hi everyone, so just a little blurb about ConsenSys. So we're one of the world's largest Ethereum-based blockchain production studio, developing over 54 companies. Some of you might be familiar with them, like MetaMask and Newport. Others you might not, it's like Balance, which is in accounting, or Viant, which is in supply chain management. And we also work with building enterprise solutions. So in the Philippines, we're working on the Union Bank I2I project, which is an interbank payment and settlement system for rural banks, and now the rural banks that were once excluded from the payment network that we all get to enjoy are now able to participate for one of the first times ever. And we also work on social impact projects like holding war criminals accountable with the Ethereum blockchain. When we do this through our ConsenSys for Social Impact initiative, which is a group of researchers and developers within the ConsenSys ecosystem of companies, so one of 54, that work specifically on partnerships with NGOs and various organizations, all working towards the same goals. So in 2016, we started the Blockchain for Social Impact Coalition. We realized that there was a lot of unheard projects and unanswered projects that were coming through our enterprise arm that we were paying attention to, and so we also wanted to kind of like revitalize the mission within ConsenSys, which was basically recreating a lot of recreating a lot of these for the good of the world, as simple as it is. And so we focused on three things, which were drive market adoption of blockchain technology. So we started looking at what are these NGOs looking at, and how can we simplify their business processes and improve operational efficiency. So we built a number of POCs. One was with the World Wildlife Foundation. Through our work with Viant, the supply chain tracking, we were able to kind of track the provenance of tuna from source all the way to consumerism. And that was really valuable because people really wanted to see if their fish or the food they were eating was sustainably sourced. A second thing we did was promote the blockchain ecosystem development, and that was when we started the largest blockchain for social impact hackathon, which had over 600 participants in 20 plus countries. One of them was Lifemesh, and they became one of our successful projects out of that. Successful hackathon teams wherein out of 8 of the teams that participate from 20 countries, they all progressed to becoming companies today. And so every year we launch a hackathon or decelerator program where we focus on one of the United Nations SDG goals. Either if it's for identity, if it's for supply chain management, if it's for what are the other projects that we have? Disaster responsiveness. And we kind of crowdsource these solutions from people who are closer to the ground, and then eventually move them through an accelerator program where they eventually get funding. So that's one of the pinnacles, so promote the blockchain ecosystem. And this is the one that I really like, which is improve the quality of life for the world's most vulnerable populations. I think there was billions of dollars of investment for ICOs raised last year, and hardly a fraction of that is going into social impact investing, or actually going to real world use cases that could use those funds. And so we're not addressing what we should be using this technology for. And so I'm really proud to be sitting next to companies like RightMesh and companies like LifeMesh, who are actually embedding that into their principles and DNA of their companies. And so as representing ConsenSys and the work that we do for social impact, I hope that gives you kind of a brief overview of what we do in terms of coalitions and working groups and just helping boost this ecosystem to kind of go towards the right way. And I don't want to take too much time. I want to leave more time for the panel itself. So thanks for listening.
We're just grateful that ConsenSys is putting in a lot of support in terms of really making the Philippines as a sandbox for these initiatives. So guys, John, Carlo, and Chris, maybe you can join me here on stage. We'll just have a conversation, and after maybe 20-30 minutes, we can just have Q&A and have an informal conversation. Hello. So we'll just dive right into the topic on humanitarian applications for the blockchain. So maybe a round of how you got into the blockchain space. Talk to us a bit about your blockchain journey. What made you get into the blockchain space?
I guess I'll start. So for ourselves, it was a little bit by accident. So the parent company started 8.5 years ago. The parent company called Left. We do things right, which is how we got the right mesh. But really, we actually got in by accident. We had our team in Bangladesh for building some applications, building some technologies, and we really wanted to facilitate that communication in an offline environment. Our first application itself was an app called Yo. It was being used in markets like Cuba, El Salvador, Colombia, and of course Bangladesh. But in a market like Cuba, where you have no internet access, we needed a way to find a level of identity without having that centralized access. Normally you'd actually rely on that centralized authority, be it the ISP, the government, Facebook, Google for your identity layer. And our team came to me and said, hey John, we have a solution to our identity problems. We now can establish identity entirely in an offline environment. So how do we do that? Well, there's a new thing launched. It's called Ethereum. It's kind of like Bitcoin, but we think we can use the Ethereum ID instead of an IP address. And that was kind of the start. It says, okay, let's go for it. It solved the problem. We were able to create identity without connecting to a centralized authority. And lo and behold, Ethereum became something.
Maybe it's just interesting. I just want to touch on that, on how blockchain uniquely enabled the solution that you were looking for.
So, like all of you, when I first heard about the word blockchain, I was very unfamiliar. I was like, I don't even know what this is. But then I read the book Blockchain Revolution, and after, that was a good start. And after I read it, it was more of like a light bulb moment for me, and all I wanted to do thereafter was bring it to the Philippines because I saw all of the proposed solutions as kind of like the answer to the corruption that we face day to day. And this was about 2 years ago, and so I've just been trying to figure out ever since then how to bring it back to the Philippines. And so our work right now has just been on working with trusted institutions that have the trust of both the regulators and the people, and working with them and alongside with them, because you have to kind of like shift their framework of thinking and of these like old legacy mindsets in order to kind of create a new kind of society emerge. And I think we've been so far so good. They haven't kicked us out just yet.
So my name's Carlo De La Torre. I'm part of Lifemesh, but in terms of how I got into blockchain, so I run a nonprofit called Waves for Water. I'm the country director. So we provide access to clean drinking water. So we do a lot of disaster response and community development. I never thought of myself as a humanitarian at first because I was always been an entrepreneur. I was building businesses, and when this came to my lap, the first thing I said was that if we had a business mindset, maybe we could tap into the humanitarian aspect and can make things sustainable. And the first thing I saw was that how people thought of disaster relief as a means to business and different means rather than social impact was just mind-boggling to me. So when blockchain came out of nowhere, the first thing I said, I heard about blockchain through Bitcoin. When I understood what the underlying technology was, I was just, reminds me of BitTorrent or LimeWire, really. And I said, this might be the right answer for humanitarian use cases. And that was really the start of the what if, right? And that's been something we've been dabbling about, but just a short stint right now. I know right now I'm a bit exhausted because I'm currently responding to the Indonesian earthquake, 7.5 earthquake in Palu. And it's the same thing that's happening over and over again. Everybody's not coordinated. Top down, bottom top, they're not doing the right things because at the end of the day, they make great reports, but there's no way for anybody to read about it. There's no accountability, there's no publishing, there's no coordination. And I think that's the biggest problem with humanitarians. There's the intention, but then there's no collaboration. And I think the blockchain technology is something that's very, very important in this case.
So yeah, so I guess my side would come more as a technologist. So I was not in the humanitarian space before this, and if you told me I was gonna be in it, I would have been like, no, probably not. So yeah, being a technologist, sometimes you're also an anarchist. So you view big organizations, let's say the government, as something you wanna take down or bypass or find a hack around. And when I saw the blockchain space and when we joined the ConsenSys Social Impact Hackathon in 2017, our topic was social impact. And I was thinking, okay, if a blockchain can enable like businesses or functions of where you remove the middleman, I was thinking, okay, and if we want to do this in social impact, this is great because now we don't have to rely on the government to facilitate disaster response or send us goods that we need in the middle of an emergency situation. Now we don't have to wait for a huge, slow, bureaucratic process, and now we can just go straight to who you need to get it from, and we'll have our own ecosystem in that sense. So that's a technologist's point of view.
Can I just add something to that? It's funny you said you're an anarchist. It was a few months ago that I actually was called an anarchist by a member of parliament. And it's funny things when you start going on this journey, you start going further and further down the rabbit hole, you realize that yes, we are all in this room and we are all anarchists. The conversation basically went like this. I said, he was looking for my vote in the next upcoming election, and I said, why should I vote for you? You're part of a political party, you're part of the problem. You are the middleman. I said, what do you mean? I'm your government representative. I said, no, you're just getting in the way of me getting what I want. And they said, what, are you an anarchist? And I guess we are, so.
In our own way,
yeah.
Right? So I think that like all four of you were sharing how you got into the blockchain space because you were looking for a solution for a problem. And I think that's also one of the reasons why we're here, because there are a lot of wicked problems that we'd like to solve. And really curious how blockchain can uniquely solve those problems. And and I guess the next question is, we're all talking about blockchain as a way to do good, but there are some common misconceptions that people have about blockchain. Maybe you can share a bit about this and how you as an entity, as an individual, are trying to address this in your own way.
One is always every time we get into a meeting with, especially like decision makers in a company, they always ask us, isn't blockchain Bitcoin, and isn't it used for drug smuggling? That's a very common misconception because they only see it from what they read about in the news and what's been dominating the news cycle. And so then I guess your question was, how do we overcome it? We show them like real world applications now that we can. We show them, we don't even bother going through the mechanics of the technology itself because it'll just go past their heads. We just show them the potentials. Now that we've been consulting in this space for about 2 to 3 years now, we are able to kind of like show them through, as I was explaining, a business decision framework that allows you to recognize where the value is created and also quantify what are the operational gains from moving on towards a blockchain a platform. And you might not see the gains today, but you might, but you're kind of able to kind of judge and gauge the network effect of it. That's one way we do it. I can speak to you more in detail, but I don't want to take up too much time. But do find me afterwards.
Yeah, so I'll definitely agree with a large part of that. I really look forward to the fact, or the time when people don't even talk about blockchain anymore. What is blockchain? It doesn't really matter what it is. What's a NoSQL database? Nobody should know what a database is. How does the financial money system work today? Nobody should even know about that. It just needs to work. And when you start looking at the technology itself, it is an enabling technology that creates this stateless trust enabling machine for the next generation. So whenever somebody asks me what is blockchain, I start walking through scenarios. Imagine your 2 cars driving down the road. One car talks to the other car, says, "Move over to the side. I need to go faster. If they get to work faster. I'll pay you 25 cents to do so." Why? How? Well, the cars don't talk to each other. Well, how do I trust that car? Blockchain, magic. But eventually, you'll get to the point where people won't know what blockchain is or is not. It's just going to be. And the sooner we can get to that point, and we can sort of get past it and actually get into the real world solution of actually building and solving problems.
Yeah, where it just blends in the background and it just really enables and makes things happen without us trying to understand how it works. So it's become real utility, right? Anything else?
Yeah, actually, that's a really good point, John. And like when people ask, like when they have like a misconception, one thing I like to do is not point out and correct their misconception. It's to explain what it can actually do. Like for example, a blockchain will allow you to earn money by sitting down in your chairs right now. So the way that works is token economics. But basically, let's say if you have your, and this is just me being a nerd again, but if you have like a smartwatch and you're just sitting down and it's recording your heart rate, that's valuable to like medical companies. And you can sell that for small amounts of tokens or cryptocurrencies. So small amounts of data like that are now something that are economically valuable just by sitting down.
So going back to the topic of humanitarian applications, would you mind sharing some interesting efforts you have seen and just to really demonstrate the effect of the blockchain for humanitarian initiatives? Apart from your own projects, anything that you're excited about or you're looking forward to? Because a lot of work right now is in the R&D stage, and I'm curious whether you've seen products being shipped. So maybe you can share a bit about that.
I'll sort of talk a bit more about our experience a few weeks ago when we were in the Rohingya refugee camp. And right afterwards, we had a hackathon with our team. We basically explained the problems. We said to the team, okay, here are the problems, come up with some solutions for that. But let me paint you the life that's actually happening in the camp right now. You have a whole bunch of smiling children. Why is that? Well, they have their lives, they have enough food to eat every few days, they practice religion, and they have a sense of community. That's the very low bar that they're dealing with. So when we start looking at how we actually go out and help, we're looking at, can we introduce connectivity into the camp when they don't have connectivity today? There's some challenges around some government regulatory authority. Much of we are trying to be an anarchist, you still have to work closely with the government regulatory bodies. But you start looking at, can you enable micro work to exist in the camp itself? Can you enable somebody who does have a smartphone, can you enable them to do work in a micro task-based environment? That work can be delivered across the world in basically doing a calculation or a thought exercise or something on their smartphone, and then the act of doing so can actually earn value on their behalf for doing that task. That's blockchain-based application. You basically can now enable the World Food Program and their cards basically have those micro tasks being going back into generating revenue for the World Food Program to buy more food. And all that goes back to the things you guys are talking about from the auditability potential. That's all blockchain. So there's definitely applications like that. There's some really cool ones around delivering content to health, environment, and educational systems and caching information. Anything you can imagine is being done in the challenge right now.
I have one that's coming up. It links back to what Lifemesh is doing, which is around donation tracking abilities. In November, first week of November, we'll be launching a product demo that we built with one of Hong Kong's largest fashion houses. Who would have thought that they would actually help us build this, which allows donors to kind of first dictate where their donations are going to go towards, and then it allows us to kind of like track on the blockchain in a transparent manner that it's actually well executed and it's going to the right organizations. So like just that donation tracking capabilities is something that we don't even have to date, that you can't trust that information of, even though there are a lot of portals and banks that are working together on that. It'd be really cool to have like NGOs and NGOs like the World Wildlife Foundation and also banks here in the Philippines kind of work towards accepting international funds, and those donors being able to kind of like make us track through Lifemesh that their donations are actually going to go towards water and it's going to the right city, or it's going towards diapers and it's going to the right foundation. That is something that we're going to see by early next year. And because of the work that they're doing and the work that we're doing together, once we integrate it, it's gonna be very easy for everyone else to kind of adopt it, and that's what we're sharing out to the world very, very soon. So that really excites me, because we can do something like what the Philippine Disaster Responsiveness Foundation wants to do, which is do a trial run of the next a situation what happened with Typhoon Yolanda, where the donations were kind of like redistributed or reallocated in not a fair sense of way. So like now we can do that trial early next year. So we're excited about that. I'm gonna pass it on to them.
Yeah, I'm gonna wear my non-profit hat because they've explained majority of the pain points of the humanitarian space. It's hard because humanitarians, majority of them come from a non-profit point of view. So the word non-profit means we don't have any money to do anything else, right? So with that specific mindset, people are so traditional of, doing tasks, how to actually leapfrog from current ecosystems or systems towards next. And I think a great example is right now the World Food Program is under a large scrutiny under what they're doing with blockchain-based applications. But the guy, Robert Obbs, good friend, he always says, you know what, change is hard, but we need to do it. and they've gotten to a place where they could tell anybody with their use cases, they could see how a bit more accurate they are rather than the current traditional applications are. And I think that's the right direction forward. No? And I think that's the hardest part, because people don't really think about the process, it's rather the result. And without understanding what the underlying technology that comes with it, they're just like, so I completely agree with John, is that I can't wait for people to stop talking about blockchain. Blockchain would be part of everything else. It's like breathing, I hope. So yeah.
So I guess those are really good, like, specific projects, but in like specific aspects of, like, say, humanitarian actions. But in terms of a general use case, there are a bunch of companies, like blockchain startups as well. I'm not going to go through all the names, but what they're trying to do is they're trying to incentivize good actions in general. So for example, if you give a bottle of water to someone who's thirsty, the network would then reward you with tokens that you can then convert to cash. So general use cases like that, there are like specific ones like ours and big general aims like those. So.
Can I get one more? Yeah, sure. So another example, we're working on a pilot project in northern Canada. And it's basically the edge of the Arctic Circle, a small Inuit community that has about 300 people, 100 homes, and bringing connectivity to that. But a large part about the initiative is, can we track climate change through IoT sensors and bring that information back to universities to study climate change, having a huge impact on the local population. And go back into incentivizing the right behavior. One of the big challenges that they have is that they have all these sensors with this great data, they can't go out and get the data. So if you have a chance to actually use blockchain to say each IoT node in a way has a wallet, you can actually incentivize a person to go get that data, to retrieve that information. It's all about incentivizing people to do the right thing. We want the data as researchers, we want to know what's actually happening, and you can send it out to the field and actually reward the whole ecosystem for doing that behavior. You can really start influencing behaviors.
I find this fascinating, this whole incentivized volunteerism, incentivizing people to do good, because it's a great alignment towards a singular focus, right, to create a lot of impact from a technology that's new, right? And I think it makes sense for institutions like the World Food Program to adopt something like this, because it gives you some sense of comfort that these institutions are looking at the blockchain. Because a lot of people are scared because of misconceptions, but if these institutions are starting to really use it to pilot humanitarian initiatives, then it gives people some level of, I guess, comfort. And I like the whole idea around micro-work, especially in this gig economy where people are just like trying to find different ways to earn money. But micro-work is very, very interesting. Okay, but what are the challenges in terms of adoption? Because like blockchain is still at its very early stage, and it's always a question. Like even if it's a humanitarian application, and not, because we always hear about blockchain and fintech, but we rarely hear stories around humanitarian applications. I'm curious though, like what are the issues in terms of adoption for these projects?
I don't think this is isolated to blockchain products and dApps. It's across the board. It's the human-centered design around the applications, the front end, the UI. It's still very weak. That goes for any banking application especially. And if you can't get yourself to kind of like be almost like, I guess, intuitive in terms of its use, then you won't have mass adoption. If you don't make it simple, if you don't create the infrastructure, if you don't have the right, I guess, way of speaking to the users itself, then I think right now that is our hurdle. And we need designers, we need people who understand UX and UI, which is user experience and user interface, yeah, really, really well to help us with that. We also need subject matter experts who can work with us on that, because the way applications are designed right now, there's a big disconnect with the end user and also with the developers themselves. I mean, like we're going through this right now once we give it out to the customer itself, there are probably 20 features that we had overlooked because we think that we know better. That's wrong because we need to be collaborative. I think that's the biggest hurdle at the moment.
So disaster response community development aspect. Okay, so we connect nonprofits and government to work together towards a given cause when it's time conscious, right? Because this time people are dying. People don't get that part, right? Because there's this huge ego with humanitarians. Sorry if there are humanitarians here. I'm gonna call you guys out, or even me, is that people want to raise their flags and say, we save these people. People should forget about that. That's not the point. And people completely forget the mission of what humanitarians are. And it's funny, so I'll give you a real life example right now. What's happening right now in Palu is that there are different phases on disaster response. Currently right now we're at phase 1 where people go there, check the place out, make reports, come back, and then figure out how to coordinate. But you have 12 nonprofits going around the same place, making their own reports that's completely inconsistent. They give it out to whoever their contacts are. They make their own strategy, how they're gonna bring in all these donations, all this relief, and next thing you know, somewhere or the other, they're gonna meet at the same place, and they're like, oh, you brought the same thing. Now, that could have gone to somebody else. That could be, and we talk about the whole spectrum of supply chain, right? We're talking about what happens on climate change, what happens on the weather being so intense. There's more natural disasters growing each year, and it's more and more intense because of climate change, and it's hard. Now, in the humanitarian space, especially on our spectrum, is that there is no universal standard when it comes to the underlying process of answering to a specific disaster. We have our own systems in place internally, but never out. It should be equal, and I think that's the biggest problem. For me, I'm a bit frustrated because people don't actually talk about the lives that come into the process. Like, look, this has happened already. What can we do now? They're more like, let's do the process for now, and then we'll save more. So I tell them, okay, say that again, but slowly. And if they don't get it, that's all. So that's my main point.
Okay, I'm gonna respond to that. First off, I am a humanitarian. Primary reason being, I'm a human and live on the planet Earth. Therefore, it's, I think, everybody's collective duty to do right by the world. So yes, I'm a humanitarian and proud of it. But to the biggest challenge that we're facing, I think we have a big challenge right now in that people mistake the raising funds in an ICO or token generating event as product market fit or token market fit. It's not. It has nothing to do with that. It gives you a false flag of acceptance that you actually have achieved something. And I think what we're going to see is that if you take the typical startup who does your seed round and your Series A and all the way up, you basically have to prove yourself that you have achieved product market fit. You're not going to get the next round until you have done so. Yet you have a whole bunch of companies that have not achieved anything, have raised some funds, and they think they've achieved something, and they will never pivot to the customer demand. They will not talk to the customers. So, and it's one thing to actually go and get product market fit. That's really hard. To get product market fit combined with token market fit, that's doubly hard. And I think until we start getting people out talking to customers, really understanding how the token will be impacting, or how the token plays, if there is a token, how you actually can use the blockchain for getting that product market fit, we'll have a lot more failures than the traditional startup. They'll be well-funded failures, but they will still be failures.
Yeah, so I guess those are more in the humanitarian application side, but in terms of I'm a technologist, but I'm giving you extra information. But anyway, so whether it's humanitarian side or whatever, any blockchain app that comes up is going to be limited by 3 things, I think. One is an identity system, a reliable one, which everyone's working on. Another one is a reputation system, which is very important for incentivizing good actions. And another one is proven token economic models, which I think is the farthest one at the moment, and which could be especially tricky for humanitarian actions. So it's hard to incentivize free help, but you need something sort of, let's say, a meta business model to do that.
I guess what I pick up from all these discussions is that for adoption, it really is about how blockchain exponentially makes that specific use case so much better than it actually its current state. It's only when, I guess, going back to like having the right design, it's really thinking about it from a user perspective and how my life is substantially or exponentially so much better by putting this process on the blockchain. Okay?
I saw Andreas Antonopoulos give a talk over a year ago now. If you don't know him, he's a brilliant man. He has great YouTube videos and been a great ambassador for the space. And he says that in order for you to understand the blockchain space, you have to hold two thoughts concurrently in your mind. Thought number one is 99% of all projects are crap, and this is going to change the world. So two completely opposing viewpoints, but they're both true. So there are so many different applications that people are trying to apply blockchain to it. Well, that's part of the experimentation phase we're going through right now. It is the internet of 1994, 95. We're not really sure what it's about. We're not sure what it's going to create. But yes, it is going to change the world.
And I just hope like there are more projects that ship products now.
But to jump on his point, like if you can solve the identity problem and also the reputation problem, you pretty much have the perfect model of every blockchain company and in any industry. Whether it be in finance, in supply chain management, or in the humanitarian space. Those are like two of the critical things that we need to solve, and we're not even close to solving it yet.
So identity and reputation.
Yep.
And connectivity.
And connectivity. Without internet, we won't have access to all the blockchain.
Right. Okay. Towards the end of our discussion, what does a fully decentralized society look like to you? Or is that even possible?
Go for it. You can start.
A fully decentralized world. Okay, so again, being an anarchist, that means an entire world government that runs on a distributed system. So what does that look like? Yeah, supporter. Yeah, so what does that look like? Okay, so the closest example I can give is this new startup. It's called Decenturion. So basically what happens when you sign up, they give you a passport. Like, I don't know if it's valid, but they give you a passport. I signed up. So they give you a passport, and and down the roadmap, they're gonna give you universal basic income. So the model behind that is that when companies wanna, let's say, ICO or start a business, they automatically have market adoption from all those citizens in that distributed state. And when that happens, they issue tokens, they get equity, and you automatically get universal basic income. So it's an interesting concept, and that's what I like to call meta business models, and I think that applies to a whole set of things, like whether in the humanitarian sphere or just everyday life in general. Yeah, so that's super far ahead. There you go. Yeah.
So it was Decenturion?
Yeah, it was actually announced, at ConsenSys.
Centurion.
Okay. So I think what a fully decentralized society looks like to me is one that is controlled by autonomous agents or autonomous bots that think for themselves and that basically negotiate on behalf of other autonomous agents and bots who think for themselves. We talked a bit about self-driving vehicles and how those two self-driving vehicles driving down the road negotiating a contract. Really, blockchain enables a language of the digital world to talk to each other, negotiate contracts, agreements, relationships. And I think as you start doing that without having a centralized authority in the way, that's when you start to get to that decentralized utopia.
Yeah, so self-organizing networks, whether it be groups of people or groups of computers, that run without a centralized authority. So that could be like a group of people who kind of decide how their pot of money is going to be used. Let's say you drop 1,000 ETH into this community in the rural areas of the Philippines, and it's up to them to decide which businesses they want to integrate that into and what kind of policies are going to kind of like revolve around the way they use that fund. That would be a decentralized system for me, and a decentralized version of society that, and for me, a decentralized world would mean lots of that sprouting out throughout the Philippines. The way they decide on how to vote for things that are better for the community rather than having the government kind of like impose where the funds are going to go. That's as simple as I guess envision a decentralized society.
Well, they said majority of it, but outside of the tech part, I see a house with power walls, solar panels, and right in front of me is a right-hander search spot that I could claim to myself at any given time. I can just tap minutes away for something I need outside of where I am. That's for me, that's decentralization at its best.
And I guess the question in everyone's mind would be, when will this happen? We don't know. So, last question.
Sooner than you think.
Yes. Yeah.
If Lifemesh fixes our internet connectivity.
Are you the savior of our infrastructure problems? Okay, last question. If you could have a huge billboard that was displayed to billions of people, what would it say?
Revolutions are built on hope.
Revolutions are built on hope.
You want me to explain?
Yes. Yes, please.
Line from Star Wars, but I was talking with a woman in Uganda along this journey, and this is right after the social media tax that we brought in. I'm not sure if you people are aware, but it was a 5-cent social media tax. And we were sort of talking about what is possible in the future. And she said to me afterwards that we've given her hope. And I responded back with quoting Star Wars, because that's what you do when you're faced with that type of feedback, that revolutions are built on hope. We are in the midst of a revolution. We are building new technologies, things that have never been done before. We are tearing down the old systems. We are building new ones. And this is a revolution. And the reason why we're all here is that we have a vision for the future that is better than the one we're currently in today. Whether that is involving universal basic income, whether that's involving connectivity for all, whether that's involving humanitarian systems that work, that's all built on hope. And if we didn't have hope, we would not have a chance.
Yeah, I can't. I was just going to say buy civil tokens. It's one of our projects.
Still going back to reputation and identity.
Which is, yeah, it is. If you fund projects like that are actually looking towards building a reputation system to eliminate fake news, then I think that the information that we receive on the internet will be more and more credible. So yeah, buy civil tokens right now.
Oh, okay. I had to check my phone because I want to make sure I quote it right. But President Obama said something like, "We are the first generation to feel the effect of climate change and the last generation who can do something about it." Right? So not about, well, climate change is there, it's happening, it might be the new normal, but then goes back to what John said, is really hope, right? If not now, when?
Those are all quite profound. Yeah. Well, anyway, mine would always just be don't reuse, reinvent. Because in my opinion, if I'm going to solve any kind of problem, it's because what is here now doesn't work. So don't pick up what you see around you. Find a new way to solve that problem. So don't reuse, reinvent.
Okay, thanks guys. And we're opening the floor for questions. Yes, Mike.
Hey. Hi everyone, thank you so much for all the ideas and information and website. Sure.
Welcome.
We've already signed up.
Oh.
Great. Yeah, I have a friend who needs to fix an education system. Poor country, messed up completely, no working K-12 system. How would you apply blockchain technology there? I mean, we already have some ideas, but I'd like to hear yours. You're from ConsenSys, you guys do this all the time.
Education, we provide education in blockchain concepts and foundational, 101s. How are we going to do that? Well, okay, yeah, fine. So right now we're trying to apply the idea of a reputation system through certificates.
Okay.
Right now, the world is very focused on where you graduated from, what school, who was your professor, and who do you know? You know, like these legacy institutions that kind of like marginalize 90% of the population because they don't have access to that type of educational institutions. With by building a decentralized certificate attestation system, we can now have our peers attest that we've gone through these courses, that we have actually completed these modules, and that it was done by somebody with a great track record, I guess, of delivering the education, and also of like, I think if it was the creator of the module or if it was a deliverer. And so once you build up this like reputation rating, then you can use that to show maybe once it's accepted again, these certificates by the industry or by the government, then you can now use that as, I guess, your personal collateral to show them that you're capable. And right now, these kinds of like certifications and attestations of the work that you've done, you aren't able to kind of like make that credibly known to your society because there's no way to tokenize those types of activities. And so if you can tokenize activities down to that granular level, then you can have this type of certifications available. I don't know if that's going to happen soon, but somebody needs to start it.
What do you mean granular? I'm curious about that now.
Like, I studied for 12 hours and somebody can verify.
So like micro courses.
Yeah, like micro activities that you virtually could lie about in the past is now impossible to do.
So it's taking the micro work concept into education. I have not heard that one before. That is awesome.
So I think one of the things that you have to realize now is that with the world's information being available, it's not for lack of information out there. All MIT coursework is available for free online. Congratulations, the top computer science program is available for all of us, should we so choose to take it. The reality, however, is that, and we are reading today that the Philippines is now offering free university education. There's a new program that was coming out that's offering free university courses, which is excellent. I think most nations in the world should do something similar. But the courses are available for others to take. It's just not always accessible. We've seen various schools that do not have connectivity, therefore how can they access and learn? There was that a image that was circulating around the web, I don't know, 4 or 5 months ago, about the person who would recreate Microsoft Word on chalk in Africa.
Wow.
And basically write all the screens there and said, this is what it's like, and describing what a mouse is like from a computer standpoint, they've never held a mouse before. So I think as we look at the future of a connected world, and in which it's the 7 billion people on the planet all have equal opportunity, you have to start with some of those basic building blocks, because what's happening is that the connected world, the developed economies, have access to the education and informational systems, all the TED Talks you can imagine, the fact that we're sitting in a room like this learning on a Tuesday, sorry, time zone changes everywhere, is we're very fortunate in the world. Others are spending 4 hours a day walking to go get water, don't have time to go to school. So we have to fix some of those problems, and then the education stuff will solve itself.
Cool. And check. Oh, yeah, one. Yeah.
So actually, Aya's answer was like perfect, and just to provide more context around that, so we went from institutionalized education, like with schools, and then we moved into like on-demand services, like say Udacity, Coursera. If you want, what the first thing I would guess is to take that content and then put it in that P2P tokenized granular system that I mentioned. So if you've ever checked out Udacity, like they teach all sorts of things, a lot of tech, but if you can turn that into a P2P system, the content would be really good.
A granular P2P system.
Yes. Yeah.
That is an aspect I have not heard of before. Thank you.
Back in elementary school, you see these gold stars around a little poster board in the wall.
Yeah.
Why can't you get a token for that instead? And then they say, here you go, you don't think you should go and get a new skin on Dota or Picky or whatever you want to do. You can start looking at those other reward-based things. So once again, it goes back to incentivizing the right behavior. It's gold star is useless, but now if I'm actually every time I get a little mark, I get a token for the university education.
Incentivizing micro study. I love it. That's the marketing phrase. Thanks.
It's free consultation for you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
As long as you fix the K-12 system of that country.
We'll work on it. Yeah, exactly. Previously on blockchain space.
Evening, guys. So I've got a friend actually from London that's tuned into Facebook Live right now, which I find really cool. So he's actually involved in humanitarian work in the blockchain sector as well, in particular for emergency situations. So he's got a couple of questions, so I'm representing him. So his first question is, why give people a token in an emergency when hardly anyone will be able to use the token, i.e. there is little to no acceptance network? And then the second one is, I'm sure you got it. The second one is, do they see the ID issue to be more of a tech problem or a standards related problem?
Can we just show you an example?
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, sure.
Oh. Yeah. What?
Well, I can start with the first question and the way Lifemesh is implementing it.
Yep.
We're not giving tokens to people in disaster situations at all. All they do is open the app and ask for help. They don't know it's a blockchain, there's no wallet, it's just an app, I need help, that's it. And then it's a supply tracking in the back end. And for the second question, oh, this one?
Yeah.
Oh,
That's different.
yeah. So,
What is the token used for?
right. I'm actually trying to resolve it in my head, not sure how. Do you want to answer it, Sid?
I mean, you're tokenizing your identity.
Right.
But as simple as like.
Explain it.
Okay, anyway. Wait, I don't know what it's leading into, I don't get it yet, but this is my business card. So this is a whole identity system, and essentially when I'm done coding this, you can send crypto to your LinkedIn. So basically, this is your whole identity right there. That's your Facebook, your LinkedIn, your crypto wallet, your Ethereum address, your name, your number.
And in any situation, all I have to do is open my camera and scan it.
Yeah.
It's automatic.
Yeah.
And it takes like, I don't know how many 0.00 something seconds.
Yeah.
And so you're not actually creating friction into using it, you're using what they currently have. And
Okay.
streamlining that process.
It's like Facebook login back in the day.
It's not even, it's simpler than that.
Simpler than that.
It literally don't have to do anything, you just have to put your camera on the QR code.
Without the hacks involved.
And the
Without
great thing,
without having to put your password.
Yeah.
and the great thing about it is this can contain any information. It's so simple. Your national ID, your NSO birth certificate, driver's license, your DNA.
It's like a successor to OAuth.
It's the next step to OAuth.
It is.
Next step of OAuth.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But you needed a blockchain to do it.
There you go.
Do you want to jump in on that?
We're working on an emergency communications app called Flare. It's what happens when the networks go down, and can you still facilitate communication, exchange of finances, ask for help, and people assume that we've all been sort of in various situations, or in a disaster, or for that matter, if there's a government oversight overreaching, basically shuts the network down. Those are just as equally as humanitarian issues as a typhoon coming through and destroying communication systems. If you have an entire system and economy based on blockchain technologies that are now trying to rely on payments or transactions or identity, and that has to go up and across a centralized infrastructure, that's not truly decentralized. It's the moment we rely on an ISP, you're relying on a middleman. And in a disaster situation, when you don't have an ISP to rely on, how can I now trust you and interact with you? And that's really where it doesn't require a tokenized system. It's still using the blockchain-based technologies, and you can still give help when help is needed most.
I'll let you guys feedback.
What's his name? We'll say hi.
Shout out.
His name is Alesh.
Hi.
Anyone else? Yes, sir. John?
These guys' questions keep improving every meeting. I love it.
Meanwhile, we mentioned about decentralization, right? So my question is this: if the future of technology is many different industries were using the blockchain technology, was it possible that sooner or later there are going to be paperless transactions when it goes to business or other activities so there would be less hassle. But still, the reliability of the transparency of the record is still there. Was it possible? And also, when it comes to banking system, we can remove the middleman, and with honesty and transparency, we can have cashless, like the fiat money, the paper bill money transactions doing with the system, the blockchain technology. What's your opinion about that? All of you can answer. Thanks.
Well, I'll speak to the paperless standpoint and where I see the future going. My father was in the pulp and paper industry. He used to actually have white paper paper plants that he was manufacturing. The advent of the computer industry caused a massive boom in white paper products being sold. So the advent of technology caused, I think it was like a 10x, 20x increase of paper being produced and paper being used. I think we're going to see the same thing in blockchain technologies. Right now we have a certain number of transactions, but we're about to see an exponential, massively exponential number of transactions occurring for everyday occurrences. It's just all of us in the room here will have a transaction going back, sharing our identity back and forth, all being logged. So we'll just have a lot more transactions. You probably won't see a true reduction in the amount of paper being used in that instance. It'll still be used for what it is. In fact, people will probably start printing out all the transactions. Look at all these transactions I did for some strange artifactory reason. I do think, however, that as you start to look at where the evolution of the digitization of everything is what I like to call it, we're sitting in a world that we basically are encouraging digital transactions to occur. Digital transaction occurs, and the very first thing that the old guard wants to do is convert it back into a fiat transaction. You take digital, go into fiat, then to do what with it? Well, if you look at what society is going, more and more services are becoming digital. And we did a market research survey about our target consumers, those that are emerging consumer class who become consumers for the very first time. When you get just out of that Maslow's hierarchy of needs there, the very first thing they want to do is enter the consumer class. And what they want to buy are, number one is connectivity, number two is entertainment, music, apps, games, education. All those things are now digital. So why do you want to go from digital to fiat to go back to digital again? I don't think they will. I think they'll go from digital and stay in digital.
Yeah, and to add to that, well, you mentioned like the banking space. Are we gonna ever get completely off paper notes and everything? That's happening now in the Philippines. So the ConsenSys and Neonbank Eye to Eye project that we're working on. By the way, I'm also ConsenSys, but anyway. So we're working on Eye to Eye, and that is a interbank settlement system between all the banks in the Philippines. So it's starting with Union Bank. I know there are other banks signing on. I won't. Rural banks. I think was it 100? 100 rural banks are signing up.
Security bank is now
Oh.
process of that.
We're doing something too?
Security bank.
Cool.
Yeah, what are they doing?
I didn't know that.
It's only rumors that they're trying to engage into the cryptocurrency transaction.
Find out more and reveal it at the next meeting. You want to know, man?
I listened to news. This is a rumor.
Yeah, well, definitely all the banks are looking into it, and I feel like at least in the Philippine setting, Eye to Eye is a great starting point. So definitely.
The bad news is when some of the bitcoins were hacked, like
Wait, security banks bitcoins were hacked.
No. I mean, one of the banks in the Philippines have a bad reputation about the bitcoin. That's the video.
Okay, you can't just do that without spilling name. Oh, video. Okay, thank you.
Cool.
Anything else?
Come back to us with more info on that security bank stuff, alright? We want to hear it.
Guys, are there more questions?
Yeah, I have one.
I saw his hand first. Maybe after him. Sige, please.
I have a curious Lifemesh question. So so you told in your talk a while ago that when the network goes down, you have a solution to find it. So I'm just curious on how you you bridge your network to the current cloud network, for example. And like, if ever the internet goes down, how do you connect your data with other servers in case that the networks goes down? And if are you open into building something on top of your mesh also, so that like you can build your own servers connected on your mesh?
Yes, to the last part, we actually have a super peer architecture that we're encouraging the community to build. Super peers is almost like an exit node for a Tor network or a dash node or various things like that. Those super peers really serve as a function to connect meshes to each other, so a mesh of meshes. We're definitely encouraging people to go out and identify mechanisms and plans to build those. We are having a super peer contest. I guess we see Joe for more details. To the other question as far as reconciling the offline transactions, within our technology, definitely talk to Lucian there, he's still awake in the back of the room. But what we try to do is we've taken Raiden as a network. We've basically ported Raiden to a Java environment, and we now have some offline state channels that you do staking on the super peer, and then you start reconcile some transactions and back and forth. So you and I can transact back and forth. I give you 5, give you 3, I give you 1. You now have whatever the math works out to be there. But sort of maintain that state ledger. Then when one person within a network has connectivity, all those transactions can be reconciled back up to the network again. Does that help?
Yeah, it's a simple question. It's just a matter of what is your ask for each one of us here in order to help you, or let other people know about what you're doing? Is it just a matter of spreading the word, or do you have specific call to action items that you want us to tell them? And not the generic ones like get into the blockchain and all this stuff. I want to hear a specific call to action.
What's your background?
I'm a technologist, and honestly, I have a lot of questions, technical, but I don't need to step out the venue, so it's just a matter of.
Well, yeah, that's an ask. Speak to us afterwards. Let's see how we can work together.
Well, I think that's one point, but just for all of us here, we have the audience.
Yeah, I have something that the entire blockchain decentralized cryptocurrency space, however you want to classify this thing that we're all in, is a strange world that's motivated by self-interest. The reason why any of this stuff works is because we all believe it works. And the same reason why any religion or any monetary system works, or any government or social order, is you all have a belief. Go back to revolution built on hope. We have hope with something better. So because you are motivated by self-interest, the moment you tell somebody else, you basically are propagating the message further. So what I would ask of everybody here is to go out and tell 2 people. Talk about what you're working on, talk about the technology, talk about, even if it's just sort of a plant the seed, that planting the seed cements the fact that this technology will stick. If you look at the standard network, you and I are in a network. We actually have a relationship back and forth. That network is only as good as you and I. However, the moment we introduce a third person into that network, if the benefit to those first 2 people is stronger, we have a network effect. So if you go out and you tell somebody about blockchain or cryptocurrency or whatever you want to sort of classify this thing, and the moment you tell somebody else, we have an added benefit from that, the network improves. So go tell 2 friends.
So in the case of Lifemesh, is there an app that we download or something?
We have a software development kit. We are looking for developers to integrate. I think Joe has the new website launched. Soon go to rightmesh.io. You can sign up as a developer and start hacking away and building apps.
Actually, like in terms of like a solid, like actionable item, if you know NGOs, just throw them our way. Yeah. And on a second note, you mentioned an app. Yeah, we will be launching it in Q1, so we will send you the link. Yeah.
Go ahead, Bree.
I'll add. I'm from Rightmesh as well. I work on partnership development, but along the same lines as Chris, like if you are a company who's interested in learning more about Rightmesh and how mesh networking can be helpful to you, please talk to us afterwards, and we can see what we can do about proof of concepts. Also, we have the soft mainnet launch, as John mentioned, in Q1 of next year, where we're looking for people to test out running super pairs. More information will be on the new website very soon.
As soon as Joe gets back to his computer.
So what I've actually personally noticed with the meetup events that we're going through, because I've been like trying to go to meetup by meetup every week and try to reach out with other blockchain companies like you and connect you with people. I want to speak on behalf of like someone who's trying to build an application right now that we're introducing to real enterprises. So we're building an application that we want to streamline the process of buying properties overseas for foreign buyers and immigrants, like say Filipinos that are already living abroad and they want to buy properties back home or some other Southeast Asian countries. One of the challenges we're facing right now is that, number one, the reputation, the trust. We always talk about how we want to digitalize documents, all the contracts and buyer's information sheet that they can fill out. But the number one question they always have is, what are you going to do with the data? That you put in your system and you collect all this buyer's information. I think the challenge right now that we have is really building the community so that these enterprises would trust us back. Because right now the challenge is we get a UI UX person, we get a really good we get really good blockchain developers, and then we build a really good platform that would be functional for them. We build dashboards for them. But then the next question is, why would we change the traditional way we're doing business and put all of the information to you? And then we would try to explain to them that because it's going to cut the cost. Instead of you renting a whole warehouse, storing all these papers, imagine buying a house, it would require you to fill out this bunch of papers for that. What I've actually, going back to the meetup events in the community, is that what I've actually noticed is that when you go to Blockchain Space PH, you see the same people. You see the same faces. And I have some suggestions based on this one meeting we had this early afternoon with one media guy. And he said, I've been getting a lot of interest from my media friends and PR friends. This also answers like media, putting in the fake questions about hyping the scam about Bitcoin and all that without really understanding the underlying technology and how it can really, tremendously help businesses, especially human aid and, cash-based transfers and all that stuff. And especially identity for refugees. That's what you're building right now. It's really incredible. And if we're able to implement that, it's going to help a lot of people who don't have passports, who don't have birth certificates, who are like staying in camps. But yes, it would help if we tell two people. We really can do that. But I think his question is also, how can we make it scale on a bigger, like make it scale bigger? And my suggestion is, number one, maybe we can visit co-working spaces that are not here in Makati. Maybe we can do this. Of course, we want this to be the venue, right? But maybe what people need, what these media people are asking us right now, is they're willing to assemble and have a blockchain 101. Because they want to understand, what is this blockchain all about? Without really talking about tokenizing media or tokenizing PR, or how can you do ICO? I've met a lot of people, I want to ICO my show, I want to ICO my blog. And I'm just like, you don't have an idea how hard it is to do an ICO, It's so hard. It's so hard right now. I mean, with what's going on in the market, without really the idea of, it just goes out of their mouth that they want to raise money for their show. My suggestion is, number one, let's go out there. Because these meetup events, for example, you do it in Makati, it's just the same faces that we see here. So maybe we can coordinate with more co-working spaces, studios in universities. Let's do blockchain 101 for students. Blockchain, imagine if there are like 10 people doing it in 10 different universities. Just 1 or 2 speakers per university. And number 2 is that let's make the space less intimidating for people who are in businesses. Because I notice a lot of people, they come in at first time and they don't come back anymore. I've been pushing my team to attend blockchain events so you learn more, because we're building a blockchain project. And we can just talk about raising an ICO, promising that we can digitalize things, and we don't really talk about, how do we even understand what blockchain is, right? We just understand a cryptocurrency, the token that we're building right now, and that we're raising $50 million. So I think we need to really encourage people to go back by making sure that, of course, we can't avoid using jargon and technical words. But I saw that when we make the group less intimidating for the non-technical, but the entrepreneurial, and we try to understand what they do, then you see them again on the second event and the third event. So I'm just, kind of curious if we can work with ConsenSys.
Yeah, there is. So there is actually an education delivery partner that is looking for people like you who have been in the space for a few months to a couple of years that will pay you to teach and talk to students. So please talk to us, or we'll create a sign-up sheet. They're looking for trainers. And it's all very foundational. It's all very basic 101, and they're having a hard time looking for resources of that kind. And you'll be speaking to university students.
Yeah, based on my experience also, for example, I went to this Accenture hackathon. They have this really nice liquid studio where they hosted 100 women who are coding 24 hours. There were some who have a bit of idea of what blockchain is because of Bitcoin. But then when you started explaining it to them, these are UX UI, the ones that you need. They kind of become intimidated because if it's nobody's fault. We're not making it intimidating for them, but they just don't understand the technology. The challenge right now is how do we make them attend? What's the action plan of our community to make them attend events like this? Because I try to push the girls. I try to get the phone numbers, the list building ability to put it in an Excel sheet, and I try to invite them. And they're like, no, I live in Quezon City. I live in Alabang. So I'm just saying this because I saw it with one community, Connected Women. It was so effective. September 26, 6 p.m., they had Connected Women Quezon City. They had Connected Women Alabang. There was Naga, where VP Lenny was even a guest an event before that. There's Connected Women Bohol. There's Connected Women Cebu. And I'm just thinking, what if we have a humanitarian application on one same day at different event venues for those who cannot come to Makati?
Yeah, so we definitely have an answer for you. So if you're familiar, we've been doing these blockchain developer meetups, right? And that's super technical. And we've been getting a lot of traction there. But what we're planning coming in the next months up to early next year is a UX track, a biz track, and a 101 track. So if that's something you want to collaborate on, we can definitely do that. It's slowly growing from the technical to the application, and it's completely free. And we have a business model that we're preparing there to make it free for attendees all the time. And I think it's something we can discuss. Yeah.
Can I add one more thing to that? And I'm sure Bree, you may want to jump in as well. Reach out to the global community. This is not just a Manila only thing. It's not just a Philippines only thing. It's not just a Southeast Asia thing. It's everywhere in the world. And one thing that I've discovered in my journeys and my travels is that in a way we are a community that is willing to help and share. We were talking before about comparing the dot-com revolution to this one we're in right now. And the old dot-com revolution used to say, hi, my name is John, I'm running a consumer internet stealth company, how about you? And you bond over the fact that you're both in this new revolution together. You don't share what you're working on. What's really unique and different about the space is that everybody you talk to, regardless of the country, regardless of the project, is more than willing to share. So if you want to learn what works, ask Bree what works in Canada. Reach out to people who are basically from ConsenSys anywhere in the world, and they'd be more than willing to share best practices and how to work and how to engage and the women in tech, blockchain in tech, or women in blockchain groups. You're not a small group, you're part of a global movement.
I'll jump in here as well, because I guess some of that was focused towards blockchain space itself as well. So I think there are a couple of ways to see also the fixed location where we're holding the events. So the space we branded it blockchain space, so exactly people know exactly what they're going to get. And I think that has some value to it as well. So the way that we've constructed it is that we have 3 different levels of events. We've tried to brand them now going forward, so that was actually a concerted effort between our team to think of, okay, so we've got a starter series that goes from Blockchain 101 to kind of a more intermediate series. So this is a level up series. So that you need some kind of foundational knowledge before you come in to be able to understand what these guys are talking about. And then we've got a pro series, which is more like you're really deep into the industry. So there is a benefit of having a fixed space, and also in terms of kind of cost-wise, it really helps the community. So I mean, I can tell you that most of our events we haven't charged for, so we really offer up the space for free. You know, and a lot of people are not willing to do that. So that's what we see as our kind of our contribution towards it, and we understand like the pain points of the community and trying to build it. But then saying this, there are pretty much, when I look over at the panel over here, these are all different communities, and they are all decentralized. No one's in one single place. You've got Women in Blockchain here, you've got Block Devs Asia, you've got Ways for Water, you've got Lifemesh. Everyone's representing this movement in a different place. Right? And actually, this lady who's sitting next to you is also, she's actually, I don't know if you know about her program, and I don't know if is it? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So like, so she's going from campus to campus to roll out the same program, like Blockchain 101 plus a bit more kind of like technical introduction. She's going from campus to campus and from now about to go corporation to educate people. So I mean, I think I think combined we have a lot of value together, and I think there's no one model that's probably gonna fit all sizes. I think all of us together are gonna probably build this.
May I follow up your comment?
Thanks, Pete.
Mike, just a brief one, because it's been a long day.
I know.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it's all right. I just want to follow up what Pete said. One of the advantages of having these consecutive meetups in one place, and I don't know if you've seen this, Pete. Actually, we discussed this. Yeah. Blockchain space is starting to develop an institutional memory. For instance, there was last week there was this one real estate startup that presented, and there was a legal question about foreign ownership. That got resolved. It was mostly technical people here. 2 days later, a bunch of more legal people came up, and the question from Saturday night from technologists got resolved on Monday night by the lawyers. Now, fast forward to last Saturday. I was actually on a panel ranting on and on about blockchain applications to education. Then suddenly I remembered one of the panelists owned an education company. So, we agreed to that he would get first pick at this $20 million project. So now, here I am asking about applications of blockchain technology, further application of blockchain technology in education, and now we have incentivized micro-study, which, I don't know, one of you should patent that. Point is, there is an advantage to having all this in one place or under one umbrella, whether that's multiple locations. The building of institutional memory. If we could somehow capture that, that would be awesome. And that's... Yeah.
On my end, it's really amazing that we have this community, we have this space. I mean, we've been hosted by Blockchain Week. It's really good.
Just maybe my question is, sorry for the misunderstanding. My question is, how can we replicate? This is really good that we have one space here, but how can we replicate it? And of course, I've seen what Black Labs is doing, but what I just realized coming from the grassroots, actively talking, I'm one of those people that you're saying I have to talk to 2 people as much as I can every day. But how can we replicate this in a way that will make it, because we know that there's a long way to go for us to develop this technology, right, and to build this community. But maybe there's a way for us to make it faster. I'm just looking for ways that maybe I'm looking more of suggestions, because I see it in the community of women, how these women are building the community. I want to bring it here. How can we replicate what they're doing to us, and us making it possible for other communities also to get involved?
I guess Jackie, maybe to just wrap things up and to answer your question, maybe we don't even have to replicate. Maybe we just have to ride on these existing communities to see how we can support. Because there's a lot of energy in replicating, and we don't even have to do that. What we need to do is really look out there, who are people who we can bring to these communities, and influence and spur some movement from within, so we don't have to recreate everything. So I guess in true decentralized mode, right? So how do you just really tap into existing decentralized communities, and anyone can just really start, right? For instance, this whole Women in Blockchain, anyone can really start. It's not that there's one central body who has to do it. And that's the beauty of us coming together from different fronts. So I guess I'd like to end with that, and maybe we can continue just networking and talking more about our individual projects and how we can collectively come together to support each other. Thanks, everyone.